Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier sessions related to chapter 4, unit 1 of business economics, we discussed about the meaning of markets, what are different types of market structures, and also most importantly the concept of revenue, which is nothing but the total quantity of the units sold multiplied with its price, which gives us total revenue, and average revenue is nothing but price itself, and marginal revenue is the revenue that is derived by selling one more additional unit. So these three very important revenue concepts we have discussed in the earlier session: total revenue, average revenue, and marginal revenue. And by the way, the relationship of these three will be more or less the same irrespective of the topic. By now, already in the earlier chapters we discussed about total product, average product, marginal product. Same way, total cost, marginal cost, average cost. Same way now, total revenue, marginal revenue, average revenue. The logic and the relationship will be more or less the same, but naturally the graphs and the behavior, what happens over a period of time, will definitely change. As we have observed in the theory of production, the total product, average product, marginal product, all of them were rising first and then coming down. Whereas in the case of cost, it is the opposite. They were falling down first and then rising again. But the point is, the words total, marginal, and average are the same, because the cost and product both are reciprocal of each other. Naturally, the behavior of them was opposite to each other. But when it comes to revenue, definitely it has an independent behavior. But yes, revenue is not just about internal factors like the efficiency and effectiveness of production, or the ability to control the costs within the organization, or even internal and external economies of scale. Those were all related to cost and product concepts in the short run and long run, which we have discussed in chapter 3. But point we have to note here is, revenue is not just purely an internal concept. It fairly depends upon the type of market in which the firm is operating. The revenue will not be same, or the behavior of revenue will not be same in all types of markets. Each type of market will have its own type of revenue behavior. And as we have observed earlier, the marginal revenue and average revenue will be parallel to x-axis in case of perfect competition, whereas total revenue will be a linear line passing from or starting from origin going upwards in case of perfect competition. But in case of imperfect competition, imperfect competition includes all the other three: monopoly also, oligopoly also, monopolistic competition also. All of them are imperfect. On a broader basis, if you classify the markets into two categories, one is perfect, second one is imperfect. Perfect competition will have a different type of revenue behavior. All imperfect or imperfectly competitive markets will have a different type of revenue behavior. We have discussed that revenue behavior of imperfect markets also in the earlier session, wherein the marginal revenue and average revenue are not parallel to x-axis, rather they are going down from left to right, whereas the total revenue was going upwards up to certain time, and later it was coming down. That was related to imperfect markets. So the key takings from the earlier sessions are also related to the relationship between average revenue and marginal revenue, wherein we also identified the formula to calculate marginal revenue, which is equal to average revenue into E minus 1 by E. E represents the price elasticity of demand. So the distinction of revenue behavior depending upon the nature of markets is a very important aspect that we need to identify from that initial discussion of chapter 4, which we will apply in unit 3 of the same chapter later. But before that, we have to also identify and understand certain behavioral principles, bringing in both cost and revenue at the same place. Because finally, the ultimate objective of any organization is to make profit. So the logic is, when the firm should continue manufacturing or when the firm should not produce at all, or it should stop further producing and selling, is a decision that the firms have to take. And on what basis they will take that? Is it just on the basis of revenue? No. Is it just on the basis of costs? No. Both of them will be wrong. That is why we have to bring both of them put together. For that understanding, we need to observe very two important basic principles that every firm will follow. The most important principles in this entire chapter, which will guide us the price determination mechanism under different markets also later stage. But we should understand this. Of course, these are quite logical and commonsensical, nothing very special about them. Anyone with common sense and understanding of basic cost concepts can easily identify these principles. So first principle is that a firm should not produce at all if its total variable costs are not met. If its variable costs are not met by whom? By the selling price. Then it is better not to sell at all. So what is the bare minimum price at which the firm should sell its product? Is at least variable cost. At least it should be able to cover the variable cost. Does it mean if it covers variable cost it is enough? No, it is not enough. So let us understand the relationship here, little bit related to cost and profit and volume, basically, which is one of the aspects in the next level of CA intermediate, that is group 1 cost and management accounting paper in the topic of marginal costing. Let us take the basic principles so that we can understand it easily. See, first of all, let us take from a total point of view. What is sales? Sales is nothing but cost plus profit. Okay, that even kids know that. Let us just bifurcate the cost into fixed cost and variable cost. So variable cost plus fixed cost plus profit is what is sales. In this, what principle 1 is saying is, a firm should not even sell if at least if it is not able to cover variable cost. Fixed cost profit to दूर की बात. It is, if it is not even able to cover the variable cost, better not to sell. Let us understand this with some numbers. Let us say a firm has a total sales of 5,000 rupees with a variable cost of 3,000 rupees and a fixed cost of 1,000 rupees and making a profit of 1,000. Just an example. That is good. Nothing wrong with that. Why? Because the firm was able to cover both fixed cost and variable cost, and in addition to that, it was able to cover or gain some profit also. Some extra also it was gaining. That is what we call profit. If sales were 5,000, there was profit. But point here is, sales is something which is external. Not always depends upon our own whims and fancies. Cost is internal, which we know. Cost is a fact. We already incurred that while manufacturing the goods. After manufacturing the goods, whether we are able to sell or not, that depends upon market conditions. So, this is the cost structure of the firm. We can call this. Cost structure is like this. 3,000 rupees variable cost, 1,000 rupees fixed cost. So, what is the total cost? That is 4,000 rupees. Since sales are more than that 4,000 rupees, there is a profit of 1,000 rupees. That is a very good situation for any firm to have profits. Now the question comes, what if the firm is not able to sell as many goods at this price? If it can reduce the price, then it can sell, then only it can make some revenue. So according to that market conditions, if it is able to generate only 4,000 rupees sales, should it manufacture and sell or not? First and foremost point, if it is making exactly 4,000 rupees as revenue from sales, it is not having profit also, not having loss also. That is popularly called as break-even point. Break-even point means the level of sales at which there is no profit, no loss. Means the firm is able to exactly cover only its costs, both fixed costs and variable costs. So at 4,000 rupees, should the firm sell or not, or should it stop and just close the operations? Ideally, it should continue to manufacture and sell. Why is that? It is not making any profit, now should it close down? No, that will not be correct. Why? Because even if it shuts down, fixed costs will be incurred. Even if it stops selling, the 1,000 rupees fixed costs are not going to stop. That is why they are fixed costs. So imagine if the firm is not selling 4,000 rupees, that means it has stopped the operations, then it can avoid variable cost, no doubt. It can avoid variable cost. But it will still incur fixed cost of 1,000. Sales are 0, fixed cost is 1,000. That means they are entering into a loss of 1,000 because of fixed cost. Loss of 1,000 is better, or 0 profit, 0 loss is better? Common sense. 0 profit, 0 loss is better rather than having a loss. So point is, even if the firm is not making any profit, it is better off to continue production and sales, because at least it is able to cover fixed costs. Now, let us take another example. Let us say the firm is able to sell or achieve a sales of only 3,500 rupees. Next example. Then should the firm sell or not? Once again the same logic. It has covered the variable cost? Yes. But in this case, certainly there is a loss of 500 already. Why? Because the total cost was 4,000 and sales were only 3,500. So there was a loss of 500 already. Not a good position, but yeah, that is a fact. The question once again is, should the firm continue to sell and continue to operate at losses like that? Answer is once again yes. Why is that? Once again same logic. What if it does not sell this? Still it will incur 1,000 rupees fixed cost. Variable cost can be avoided if you don't sell, but fixed cost will continue to be incurred. That means then the loss would be 1,000 instead of 500. Which is better? 1,000 loss is better, 500 loss is better. Always 500 loss is better, 1,000 loss is not good. So what we can say, if the firm has a 3,500 sales also, it is better off to continue selling, because at least it is able to cover some portion of fixed cost, if not all. That is at least enough. Now the point is, what if the firm has ability to sell in the market according to market conditions only at a price of 2,800 rupees, which is even less than variable cost? Should it sell? No, it should not. Why is that? Once again same, you have to imagine, what if it sells, and what if it does not sell? Just numbers, no need to create any dreams here. On paper, simple numbers. So what if it sells 2,800 rupees? What is the final outcome? 4,000 rupees cost. That is fact. That will not change. Sales is only changing. 2,800 sales means 1,200 rupees loss. If it sells and manufactures and sells at 2,800 rupees sales price. But what if it does not sell? Means it stopped production. Then the loss will be 1,000 only, because variable cost can be avoided. Fixed cost cannot be avoided anyway. But still, loss is only 1,000. Once again, which is better? Loss of 1,000 is better, loss of 1,200 is better. Loss of 1,000 is better. So from these decisions we have to take. Loss of 1,200 is wrong, because it is more loss. So what should the firm do? It better stops the manufacturing. Okay, let it incur fixed cost, no problem. Let it continue to incur 1,000 rupees fixed cost. It will enter into losses. That is all fact. But it is better than continuing the manufacturing and incurring more losses. So what is the essence of all these numbers ultimately is about? If the firm is not able to cover its variable cost, it is better not to sell. It should not produce at all. If it is not able to maintain, it is not able to make revenue at least equivalent to total variable cost. At least we are talking. Not that that is a fantastic thing to achieve. No. Something is better than nothing. So at least what the firm should get in order to at least continue in the process of production and sales, minimum is at least variable cost has to be covered. Over and above that, it's okay. Some portion of fixed cost may be covered. If fixed costs were also able to be covered, some profit also may be made. Those are all good scenarios. But the worst scenario is what? If the firm is not able to cover even its variable cost, what is the better thing for the firm to do? Shut down, go home and sleep. That is better. That is principle number one. And what it will say? Sometimes it is better not to produce than to produce. And when the firm should produce, only it will be better to produce than not to produce. So in this scenario, when the firm is better to produce, at least if the sales are 3,000 or more. When the firm is not better off to produce or sell, is if the sales are less than 3,000. That is what we are talking about. In general, the firm always has the option of not producing at all. It is in their hands, right? They can stop production. I have seen in the newspapers also, for example, in September or August of last year, 2019, automobile sector was in very much trouble. So lot of automobile car manufacturers have stopped production. They already have a lot of stocks which are available, which can be sold. They don't want to incur further costs unnecessarily manufacturing them and keeping them piled up. So they always have the option of not producing at all, but that depends upon their decision. But when they will do that, or when they will take that decision of not producing at all, when they will do that? They will do that, they better do that when the total revenues are not enough to even make good the variable costs. If the total revenues are not even covering the variable costs, what is the point of manufacturing? Then it is better for the firm to shut down. In other words, a competitive firm should shut down if the price is below average variable cost. Okay, here we talked about the total terms. Divided by number of units, the same logic applies to price also. The total sales should be at least equal to total variable cost. Total sales is total revenue. So average revenue should be at least equal to average variable cost. What is average revenue? Nothing but price. So when the firm should shut down, if the price is below average variable cost. So now you can understand we are bringing cost also, revenue also at the same time. What happens if it brings the price, or if it stops the production if the price is below average variable cost? Then it can minimize the loss, as we have seen here. If it continues to produce, if the price is below the average variable cost, it will incur more losses. In our example, it would have incurred 1,200 rupees loss. By stopping the production, it incurs loss, but still it can minimize the losses to only 1,000 rather than 1,200 in that example. So that activity of shutting down will minimize the losses. It is not going to maximize profits and all, by the way. We are talking about worst scenario here, not a good situation. In this case, what the firms will look at is not to maximize profits and all. They want to minimize the losses. Because at least if it has covered the variable cost, it will have an operating loss equal to its fixed cost. As we have seen in this example of 3,000, let us say, instead of 2,800, if 3,000 was the sale value of the firm, then what will be the loss? Loss will be 1,000, and that is equal to what? Fixed cost. So, if the firm is able to sell exactly at variable cost, then the loss will be equal to the fixed cost, which is okay. Why is it okay? It is okay because anyway the firm has to incur. Since sunk fixed costs are irrelevant because they are already incurred. So, the costs which are irrelevant for decision making are sunk costs and fixed costs. Because of that, irrespective of whether there is production or not, they will be anyway incurred, or they would have been already incurred. So what is the point of taking them for decision making? No. So for this decision, fixed costs being sunk in nature, they are not relevant. So simply speaking, once again, the minimum average variable cost is equal to the shutdown price. What is the shutdown price? This name is important. Shutdown price means the price at which the firm can cease the production in the short run. Of course, when we say variable cost itself, we are talking about short run. So, what is the point at which the firm should stop its production and sales? That is the price, if at all the market is not able to absorb any price more than shutdown price. That is the price at which the firm should not continue production because it is not able to cover even its variable costs also. Of course, that does not mean it is going out of business. This shutdown can be temporary in nature. Don't take it too literally that just because at one point in time the prices are so low that firm is not able to cover the variable costs means the firm has to completely shut down and will not come back at all. No, not in that sense. Shutting down does not mean going out of business. Shutting down means stopping the operations temporarily. That means bringing the level of activity temporarily to zero. That's what is shutting down in real sense means. Once again, when we look at this price, that is average revenue, which is greater than the minimum average cost, but less than minimum average total cost, then what happens? The firm is able to cover its variable cost, but not all of its fixed cost. That's what we looked at here. For example, 3,500 is the sales. Let us say number of units is 1,000 or 100. Divided by 100, it will give 35. Total is total. Multiplying with number of units or dividing it by number of units will give us per unit. If you have per unit, we can convert that to total by multiplying with number of units. So let us say here, just for understanding purposes, average let us take. Average variable cost in our example was 30. Average fixed cost in our example was 10 for a particular level of activity. Let us say 100, right? That means total variable cost was 3,000, total fixed cost was 1,000. Now question is not about them. The question is about price. What if the price is 40 rupees? No problem, go ahead and sell because at least you are able to cover total fixed cost. No profit, no loss, but still it is breaking even. What if the price was 50? Fantastic, you make profit. What if the price was 35? Not so good, but not bad also. Why? Because at least you are able to cover a portion of fixed cost. What if the price was 30? Still okay. Why? Because whether we do manufacturing or don't do, there is no difference. So that is their choice. Exactly if the price is 30, means it is covering the bare minimum amount, that is average variable cost, then the firm has to decide whether they want to manufacture or not. It could be yes also, no also, depending upon their commitments to the market. But even if it stops also doesn't matter. Even if it runs the production also doesn't matter. But what if the price is 28 in the market? Then the problem comes. Then definitely the firm should shut down. So what are the words we are using here? Average revenue. Average revenue is nothing but the price that we are talking about here. And minimum average variable cost is 30 rupees. That's what we are looking at. So what is the sentence telling here? If the average revenue is greater than minimum AVC, which happened in all these cases above, these all cases were having average revenue of more than average variable cost, but less than minimum average total cost, which happened here. What is the average total cost? 40. Here in that case only the average price or average revenue was less than minimum ATC. Then the firm is able to cover its variable cost, but not all of its fixed cost. It is able to cover entire variable cost. Out of 35, 30 rupees is covered, but 10 rupees per unit fixed cost was not covered, only 5 rupees. Part of it is only covered, but still it is okay. There is no need to shut down. But what if the price is equal to the minimum ATC, which is this, equal to the minimum average total cost? What is the minimum average total cost? 40, the total of these two. So if the firm is able to sell at 40 rupees, then the firm is able to cover both fixed costs and variable costs and earn normal profit or zero economic profit. This is where once again a very important aspect has to be identified. Many questions will come from this. We discussed about economic profit and accounting profits earlier. In the discussion that we are going to do now onwards, we are talking about economic profit. Economic profit means after including in the costs all the imputed costs as well. So for example, this variable cost and fixed costs might include some of the imputed costs also. So this 40 rupees cost what we are talking about here, that is not accounting cost, that is economic cost. So for some time we have to forget about accounting costs and accounting profits. We have to think about economic profit. So in this equation, when 40 rupees was the cost, what was the profit? 0. And 0 what? 0 economic profit. Now comes the point. 0 economic profit, does it mean 0 accounting profit also? No, it is not. No. Why? Because economic profit will always be lower than accounting profit, because economic costs will be higher than accounting costs, since economic costs include all the accounting costs plus imputed costs. So economic profit naturally will be always lower than accounting profit, which means 0 economic profit means positive accounting profit. That is what we call as normal profit. So normal profit if a firm is making means what? That means it is making 0 economic profit and positive accounting profit. How is it positive accounting profit? Because accounting costs do not include the imputed costs. For the accounting purposes, the cost would not be 40. It would be less than 40. Let us say, taking imputed costs out, the total cost here for accounting purposes is only 38. Example. But price was 40. That means there is an accounting profit of 2 rupees. But still, there is an economic profit of 0. Because 40 rupees economic costs included the imputed costs of 2. So, accounting costs are always lower than economic costs. Naturally, economic costs are always higher than accounting costs because they will include imputed costs. Because of that, economic profit will be always lower than accounting profit, and vice versa. Accounting profit will be always higher than economic profit. Here economic profit, if it is 0, naturally accounting profit will be positive, and what we call that is normal profit. So when a firm is said to be making normal profit, what does it mean? It is making 0 economic profit. That's it. Then what if the price is greater than minimum ATC? In this example, say 50 rupees price. Then how much is the accounting profit? That was 12, because 38 only is accounting cost. 50 minus 38. But what is economic profit? That is 10. So accounting profit 12, economic profit 10. Would be made if the firm is able to sell the products at 50 rupees, which is greater than the minimum average total cost of 40. Then the firm is not only covering its full cost, it has covered full cost already, but also it is earning positive economic profit. 10 means positive economic profit. 0 economic profit means normal accounting profit. Positive economic profit means this is called supernormal profit. So when a firm is earning normal profit, when can we say that? If it is earning 0 economic profit. When we can say a firm is earning supernormal profit? When it is earning positive economic profit. Positive economic profit automatically means accounting profit will be much higher than that. That is called supernormal profit. These are very important words and terms. Once again, we have to be very clear. Economic profits and accounting profits are different. And when we have these two in the question, economic costs are always higher than accounting costs. Why? Because economic cost is nothing but accounting cost plus imputed cost. So naturally economic profit will be always lower than accounting profit. These are the relations that we should already know between them. Then another point to note, when economic profit is 0, accounting profit, it is called normal profit. When economic profit is positive, greater than 0, then accounting profit, it is called as supernormal profit. These are the names and relationships we have to be very, very clear and understand and remember. Also, lot of questions can be asked from this particular discussion. Very, very important principle, which we will apply also in different markets, because once you know the concept, then application becomes relatively easier. That is why principle number 1 has to be understood and remembered very strictly. A firm should not produce at all if its total variable costs are not met. If its total variable costs are met, though it is making a loss which is equivalent to its fixed cost, it can continue to produce. However, if it is able to sell the product at more than total variable cost but less than total cost, then it is still better to sell, because even though it is covering at least part of the fixed cost, that is still okay. But if the firm is able to cover both the costs, fixed and variable, and if it is able to sell more than the total cost, then total cost itself, then it will get positive economic profit, which means it is supernormal profit. But when the firm is able to sell at a price which is exactly equal to the average total cost, then that is where that is called break-even point, and where economic profit is 0, and naturally the accounting profits being more than that are called as normal profits. And by the way, when we say economic profit is 0, on the cost side we are looking at economic cost. When we say accounting profit, on the cost side we have to look at accounting cost. We cannot mix them up. We cannot take economic cost and find out economic profit, accounting profit. No. And you cannot take only accounting cost into consideration and find out economic profit. No. So economic profit means sales, whatever happened, minus economic cost. Accounting profit means sales, whatever happened, minus accounting cost. So that is the distinction between economic and accounting profits. Very, very important aspect to be noted and remembered, since a lot of questions can be asked from that. And now, coming to the another principle, that is principle number 2. The firm will be making maximum profits by expanding output to the level where marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. So that is a very important equilibrium point for the production. Now, once again, we are bringing both cost and revenue to the same place. Earlier we discussed cost separately, revenue separately. Why did we discuss that? So that we can bring them together and identify what is the best possible course of action for the organizations. And what is the best possible course of action for the organizations? it can continue to produce additional units of output so long as the marginal revenue exceeds the marginal cost. Common sense. What is marginal revenue? Marginal revenue means what? The revenue that is generated by selling one more unit is marginal revenue, right? As long as the marginal revenue is more than marginal cost. What is marginal cost? That is the additional cost incurred to manufacture one more unit. So, how much revenue you are generating by selling one more unit should be more than how much it costs you, right? Naturally. That is why when the firm should continue its operations is only when marginal revenue is more than marginal cost. And if marginal revenue has become equivalent to marginal cost, that is the equilibrium position of the organization. What if marginal revenue is less than marginal cost? That means the firm should not continue to increase its level of activity. The stage has come where it should stop its increase of scale, increase of level of activity. So, how many more number of units the firm can sell? This is an important aspect because people think any firm, any organization would like to sell as many units as it can sell or not. Obviously, yes. So, if an organization has a capacity of manufacturing and selling, just for example, say 1 lakh tons of cement in a year, if it manufactures and sells 1 lakh tons of cement at 100% capacity utilization, it all looks like fantastic, but maybe not. Maybe not. Why? Because that is not what we have to look at. We have to look at whether it was able to sell those all units in such a way that the marginal revenue that they were generating was more than marginal cost or not. If let us say the marginal revenue has become lesser than marginal cost, let us say while producing and selling say 80,000 tons, at that phase their marginal revenue already became equal to marginal cost. But because there is capacity, they just increased production, more sales, more production, more sales. They did that. And we know what happens if the level of activity keeps on increasing. Costs will slowly rise. And because of that, what happened? The revenue. And on the other side, revenue will keep on falling. That also we know. What is the nature of the costs always? They are going upwards. Nature of the revenue, marginal revenue we are talking, going downwards. So, up to here it's okay. Where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. After that, what is happening? The marginal cost is becoming more than marginal revenue. So, this is the phase where the firm should not operate. It should stop production only up to this point. If it continues to increase the production because there is capacity, because it can do that, whatever reasons it might be, then ultimately that is going to have negative impact on them. So they should stop at 80,000 only. They should not go for 1 lakh tons of sales because they are unnecessarily incurring losses or reducing their profits. They should have stopped at this level. And what is that level? That is the equilibrium. Production, what we can say. When production we are saying, that also includes sales. That is a very important principle also to note. That is principle number 2. And what is it indicating? The additional units, whatever are being sold, they will add more revenues than cost. Then only the firm should continue to add units. Otherwise, why should it continue to keep on adding its units? Why should it keep on producing more and more units and sell at a level where the additional revenue generated by selling one more unit is less than the additional cost that it incurs? Doesn't make sense. So, it should increase the level of activity only to that extent where additional units generate more revenue than they cost. That is what it is called. The point of equality between marginal revenue and marginal cost. That is where it will earn maximum profits. Very important principle. So, what is the place where the firm earns maximum profit is when marginal cost is equivalent to marginal revenue. That's what the graph we have also understood here. If you look at the marginal cost line and marginal revenue line, marginal cost line as usual going upwards, marginal revenue line going downwards for a imperfectly competitive market. If nothing is mentioned, normally the markets are imperfectly competitive. So marginal revenue is going downwards, marginal cost is going upwards. In this level, this phase, this is all the area we are talking about. So in this area, the firm is good. Why? Because marginal revenue is on the up, marginal cost is down. That means marginal cost is less than marginal revenue. That is the area where it should operate. Once it reaches this point, if equilibrium, where marginal cost and marginal revenue have become equal, it should stop. So what is the equivalent or equilibrium production where maximum profit can be made? That is where the marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. What if the firm continues to manufacture more output like B? Then marginal cost is more than marginal revenue, which will bring losses to the firm naturally. When cost is more than revenue, it will bring loss. But if it operates here at A, there is marginal revenue more than marginal cost, but still there is a scope of profit making this much. So it doesn't need to stop at A. It can still further continue to manufacture, further continue to increase its level of activity till Q. After it reaches Q, that is the equilibrium point of E, then it is better to stop increasing the level of activity. It can operate at that level. That is the number of units it can produce and sell, where its marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. That is a very important point related to marginal cost and marginal revenue. And most importantly, what we are talking about is the equilibrium point where the firm should operate, right? So that has been depicted in this figure, and the same thing is reflected in the profit also. So where is the profit increasing phase? Before Q. So this is the profit increasing phase. This all is the profit increasing phase, and this is all profit decreasing phase, because marginal cost is more than marginal revenue. That is very clear from the total profit curve also. So where it should stop? Where the profit is maximized. This is the point where the profit is maximized, and that is what is the optimum production level at which the firm should operate. Okay, so that is a point to be noted. And some other points from this graph can be understood. What happens here for all levels of output less than Q? What happens? Here, additional units of output will add more revenue than to the cost. Why? Because MR is more than MC. So it is profitable for the firm to produce them. Below or before it reaches the Q quantity, it is better to sell more and more, because marginal revenue is more than marginal cost. If at all it does not do, it would be foregoing the profit in the area of EFG. Why should it forego? It can better to increase the production till it reaches Q. Similarly, if at all any output is generated more than OQ, like for example we have taken B earlier, then unnecessarily it will incur a loss of EHI. So those are the points we observed from the graph that have been explained in that paragraph also. If it stops at A, it is foregoing this profit. Why to forego that? Unnecessarily. So better to increase the production from A to Q. In that process, they will work together. What if it produces B, which is more than Q? Then it starts incurring the loss of this much, which again is not necessary. So better not to manufacture up to B, better to stop at Q. So at equilibrium point, whatever is OQ level of production level of activity, that is where the firm should stop its further increasing of its activity. It's better to stop at OQ. So these are the points to be noted from the graph. But ultimately, what is the essence of all this? What is the essence of all this is simple. That is the principle. The firm will maximize profits at the point where the marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. That is the principle that we should understand, interpret from the graphs, and remember also, which we will apply at later stage. So these two are behavioral principles which we should be remembering them very, very thoroughly, because they are very useful in the upcoming sessions of chapter 4 unit 3. What are those principles? First principle is A firm should not produce at all if its total variable costs are not met. So if the price is less than average variable cost, there is no point of production and sales. Second principle is maximization of profits can happen only when the marginal revenue is equivalent to marginal cost. Bringing in both the cost and revenue concepts at the same place, we can get the equilibrium point, the best optimum level of output for any product in any firm, how much it should produce and sell. That is the point, that is the quantity where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. That's it. That is the end of unit 1 of chapter 4. Now let us quickly recapitulate this unit 1. What are the key areas we have touched upon in this particular unit? Let us summarize them quickly, one by one. First and foremost thing, what is the difference between economic goods and other free goods? Economic goods are scarce and they have demand and opportunity cost. Unlike free goods, they are exchangeable in the market. So the main and most important point here is scarce or not is once again a debatable issue. That's a different story. Let us not get into that. So what is the key feature of economic goods? Key feature of economic goods is they are exchangeable for a price. They have a price. So if there is water in the river, that is free good. Anybody can just go and drink that water. But that water, once it is filtered, then bottled, then distributed, then definitely that commands some price. That becomes an economic good. So economic good, one of the most important characteristics is it should have not just use value but also exchange value. Whether it has use value or not, we don't care. Exchange value definitely should be there. That is for economic goods. Then what is price? Naturally, that is the money value. That is the purchasing power of an article expressed in the form of money. So that is money value of a commodity, we can call it as price. And this we discussed already, exchange value and use value. What is exchange value? That is the amount that commodities will command in the market or the power in exchange over the purchasable commodities in general. Simply speaking, price. All these big things we don't need. What is exchange value is price. Whatever the money for which a particular commodity can be exchanged in the market is called exchange value. That is about use value and exchange value. Use value has no relevance in economics, market economics. We have to be very clear on that. In market economics, in the market, there should be economic goods only we are talking about, and those will have exchange value definitely. Then what is a market? It is an entire system of arrangement for buying and selling of a commodity or service, of course. And here the buyers and sellers bargain over a commodity for a price. Once again, bargaining does not mean face to face, they have to ask each other, kitta mein deta. Not like that. But it's about express bargaining or implied bargaining. But at the end of the day, market will have its own way of communication, wherein the buyers and sellers will exert their own power on the market price. Through what? Demand and supply. So bargain itself happens silently by change in demand and supply. That is quite natural. And what are the elements of the market? Of course, buyers and sellers and a product or service, and there should be bargaining for a price. There should be knowledgeable people around in the market who know about the market conditions, and there should be one price for a product or service at a given time. These are all the key features of market. Don't need to by heart them. Nobody is going to ask you what are the key elements of market. Write down 5 marks question, 5 points, 5 marks. No, not like that. Come out of that attitude. That is not required here in this subject. This paper is MCQ oriented paper. That means knowledge and concept is more important than memorizing. But yes, these are the various features of the market which we should generally understand. Then, on a broader basis, the markets can be classified into product markets and factor markets. Product markets are those which people directly consume, which go to the consumers. Factor markets are those which are used, which are purchased by producers themselves, wherein factors of production themselves will have a market, like for land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship also. there are separate markets. Those are called factor markets. And we discussed what are those. And don't expect market means everything is like Raitu Bazaar, people will be sitting there and asking for people to come and buy. That's only an expression, one type of market. Markets nowadays are mostly virtual, can't see them sometimes, can't experience them also, but it is there. That is the power of the market, which is invisible but yet almost omnipotent and omnipresent. That is the nature of market, which is very huge in terms of its impact on the economy. That will take some time to understand those power of the market, which we will do anyway in the macroeconomic discussion at group 2 level of CA intermediate as a part of economics for finance subject. But as of now, our job here is only to know what is market, what are the types of market. Markets can be classified onto different types. On the basis of nature of commodity also we can classify them, on the basis of the time, on the basis of the size of production, all the times. So if let us say, what are the factors which will determine is these things, like area, we can call geographically local markets, national markets, regional markets, etc. Time, short-term markets, long-term markets, like that. And nature of transaction also, on the basis of nature of transaction, like spot market, forward market, whatever it is, regulated market, unregulated market, wholesale market, retail market. Competition is there means perfectly competitive market, imperfectly competitive market. So like this, many classifications are there, which are also given here once again, just to recapitulate them. So local, regional, national, international, that is on the basis of area, on the basis of time, very short period, long period and very long period. And very short period is called as market period, very long period is called as secular period. That we have to remember. Classification in the context of time. Names are important there. On the basis of transactions, definitely spot market, futures market. Regulation, regulated, unregulated markets. Volume of business, wholesale, retail market, like that. On the basis of competition, perfectly competitive markets and imperfect markets. Imperfect markets can be further divided into 3 more categories. Monopoly, monopolistically competitive, and oligopoly. All 3 will fall under the category of imperfect markets only. Opposite of that is perfectly competitive market. So broad classification is perfect competition, imperfect competition. In the imperfect competition itself, there are 3 more segments: monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. We'll come to those details also later in a detailed manner in unit 3 of this chapter. Then coming to the very important technical aspects of revenue. What is total revenue? That is the amount of money that a firm realizes by selling certain units of a commodity, which is nothing but P multiplied with Q. That means price of a commodity multiplied with number of units of that commodity that the firm was able to sell. That is total revenue. Average revenue is nothing but price. That is the revenue earned per unit of output. Marginal revenue, marginal is always the same. Marginal means 1 plus. What is the revenue earned by the organization by selling one more additional unit? So an additional unit of the commodity, if it is sold, what change in the total revenue that would result is called marginal revenue. And how the marginal revenue and average revenue and price elasticity of demand are related. Very important equation, formula you should remember. And there will be problems on this, where you have to just substitute, nothing great. But when you remember the formula, when you put it on paper, when you substitute, then only you get the answer. So what is the formula you have to remember for relationship between these 3? Marginal revenue is equal to average revenue multiplied with E minus 1 divided by E. And E here represents price elasticity of demand. And total revenue will be maximum when? Where the elasticity is equal to 1. Where the elasticity is equal to 1 means what? Elasticity equal to 1 means marginal revenue is 0. When marginal revenue is 0, that is when the total revenue is maximum. That is another point to be noted. Then, the 2 principles that we have discussed. If a firm's total revenues are not enough to make good even the total variable cost, it is better to shut down. In other words, a competitive firm should shut down if the price is below its average variable cost. That is principle number 1. And principle number 2 is that where marginal revenue and marginal cost are equal, that is the place, that is a point, equilibrium point at which the firm will earn maximum profits. So that is where various aspects of revenue, total, marginal, average revenue were discussed, and very importantly the two behavioral principles were also discussed in this unit 1 of chapter 4. Read it carefully and remember the formula. Also remember how the revenue will change in a perfectly competitive market and a imperfect market. Normally, if nothing is mentioned, a market is imperfect market. In the imperfect market, this is what happens, which is there in the figure 2. In the perfect market, what happens is what is there on the left hand side. That is where the total revenue will just be a linear line starting from origin. But that is a rare scenario. Always normal scenario, what we have to look at is imperfect competition. And most importantly, the concepts of total revenue, average revenue and marginal revenue have to be understood, read, remembered also very well. That is the very crucial discussion which is mentioned in unit 1 of chapter 4. That will conclude this particular unit. And the classification of markets into 4 categories: perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, will be again covered in unit 3 of chapter 4, which we will discuss also in the upcoming classes. However, before going to unit 3 of chapter 4, you have to revise unit 2 of chapter 4, which we already discussed. Where we discussed, when we discussed? We discussed it when we have completed the discussion on demand and supply. So, before we move on to chapter 4, unit 3, it will be your compulsory requirement to once again revise unit 2 of chapter 4, which was related to price determination. For your reference, that class number was 32, if I am right. It was named as determination of prices or price determination. That was related to chapter 4, unit 2, which has been discussed immediately after the theory of demand and supply. After completion of chapter 2, we have discussed that, because that is an extension of that discussion only. How the prices are determined in a market, any market, general discussion this is. Naturally, by intersection of demand curve and supply curve. Naturally, yes, that is where the price determination will happen. But main point is there what we also understood. What happens to prices when there is a change in demand and supply? When there is a change in the demand or change in the supply, which could be increase also, decrease also, increase in demand also, increase in supply also, decrease in demand also, decrease in supply also, simultaneously changing also. One is increasing and other is also increasing but less than the other one, and simultaneously increasing. Sometimes one can increase, other can decrease. So many different things, same direction and opposite direction. All of them were discussed earlier. Very, very important discussion. Definite questions will come from that chapter 4, unit 2 also, which is price determination. That will be helpful for us in understanding chapter 4, unit 3, which will be once again related to the price determination in different markets. So now understand where we are going as a in a directional point of view. We started with demand, theory of supply, without which we cannot understand price determination. So we needed theory of demand, theory of supply. What was the use of that, application of that next level? That is price determination, that is C4U2. Now, we started with theory of production, without which theory of cost is not possible. So, theory of cost is dependent on theory of production. Then theory of cost is definitely on itself very important. Then we have revenues. When revenues and costs are matched, then only the equilibrium will come. So, everything is interlinked with each other. Ultimately, climax is what? Climax is simple. Marginal revenue should be equal to marginal cost. That is very simple. Marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, fantastic. But marginal cost, how do we know that? For that, we have to understand theory of cost. For that, we have to understand theory of production. Same way, marginal revenue, simple, very easy. Marginal revenue is revenue. Okay, fine. Revenue, how revenue comes? Revenue will come once again by selling the units in the market. That means, will it be same in all types of markets? No. Which means we need to know different types of markets in which the revenue will be behaving, and we need to know the price determination mechanism for each type of market. In order to know price determination for each type of market, first of all we should know how the price is determined normally, technically. In order to know that, we need to know what is theory of demand and supply. So going backwards, everything is coming and culminating here. Final conclusion, where all the canals and small tubes and all the things are coming, and finally the rivers are all merging with the sea. That is the final conclusion, which is related to price determination in different markets, how it will happen. Of course, it will happen on the basis of demand and supply, but it will also happen because of revenue and cost. Marginal revenue should be equivalent to marginal cost. When you combine these two, then we can understand whether a particular firm is making profit, normal profit, or supernormal profit, or is it in the loss zone. To bring all of them together to one place, we should know them beforehand. That is why we have been doing and understanding and trying to learn these concepts in all these classes. Now from the next class onwards, it is going to be almost the climax of business economics. Let us understand that clearly, which means we should have been already thorough with everything that we have already studied. And most importantly, not only the concepts of revenue, which we studied in Unit 1 of Chapter 4, you should also read and once again, if required, listen to the lecture related to price determination, Chapter 4, Unit 2. And that was contained in lecture number 32. So please do that before we move on to Chapter 4, Unit 3, which of course will be the ultimate objective and final destination of this entire subject, business economics. Chapter 5, as I said earlier, also is a separate chapter. That has nothing to directly do with all the other things. But yes, that will also be discussed separately later. But Chapter 4, Unit 3 is the culmination of all that we have learned in all these classes. With all the effort what we have done all these days, will come to a shape with the Unit 3 of Chapter 4 that we will discuss in the next session. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.